Hi, everybody. I'm going to just talk a little bit until just after 9:30, and then we'll start, just so that we allow time for everybody to come in. And yeah, so just while we're waiting, my name's John Arnesen. Please call me John. The other person on the line, if you can say that, I'm not quite sure if that's the right terminology, is Andy Reinecker, and he will be the person that will be monitoring your questions. And if you have a question, please type it. He will stop me at any stage, and he can talk to me and ask your question, and he probably will ask some questions as well. So that's how it's going to work. It is officially 9:30. And so I'm going to start sharing my slides as soon as, yes, there we go. Share, and we'll go to full screen. And Andy, I just want to confirm you can see my slides. My first slide, Andy?
Yeah, all visible, thanks.
All good. Okay, well, hi everybody. And thank you, Andy, for being the person that's going to ask me the tough questions as we go through this interesting half hour. I'm going to try and be a bit faster. Last week I did go over time, and I apologize for that. So I'm going to be talking about the revised occupational qualifications sub-framework. I've got revised in inverted commas because actually it hasn't been published yet, but it's on the way, it's coming. And how do I know that? Well, there was a OQSF occupational qualifications sub-framework published in March, on the 2nd of March, Gazette number 43062. The ASDSA has got these documents. If you need them, just email us. And it was withdrawn on the 2nd of September by the QCTO. An email from the CEO of the QCTO, VJN, said, I'm withdrawing it. He didn't give a reason why. I sent him an email. I said, VJN, what's going on? He said, I'll get back to you. The next thing, VJN was in hospital. Sorry, VJN, I'm glad you're feeling better. And so, oh my goodness, conspiracy theories, because we didn't quite know what was happening. What did happen on the 24th of December is the minister issued the NQF determination. We talked about that 2 weeks ago, bringing into being the qualifications in the QCTO space. And so now we're anticipating, we're holding our breath that the new OQSF version 2, I imagine, because I think there are going to be a few little changes from the one that was published on the 2nd March, going to come out soon. And I think it will be out in March for us to digest. So today, we don't have the official document, but this is about anticipating what's coming, because, you know, it's important to be ahead of the game. So these are the things I anticipate, and it's, you know, it's my opinion. It's not even ASDSA's opinion, but I base it on what has happened and what has been published and withdrawn. So it will replace the QCT OQSF, the old one. You know, that's obvious. I mean, that's not even a question. I think it will be for immediate implementation. If you read the minister's determination, you know, that was immediate implementation. So they really are trying to drive and move towards the new QCTO qualification model, and for a better word, get rid of the old legacy qualifications. They being Pretoria, policymakers, not me, policymakers. It'll be one of the sub-frameworks, is the Higher Education Qualification Sub-Framework run by CHE. Umalusi looks after the sub-framework that looks at what they call Gen FET, but really schooling. And this one is going to look at occupations. And that fourth bullet there says it will look at qualifications in trades. We understand that. Occupations, I think we understand that. What's the difference between a vocation and occupation? Interesting question, not for now. And professions. In the document last year, it included the term professions. And I think that signals to professional bodies, and in fact to skills development practitioners and everybody in the South African PCS system, that there is a new thing coming. I can't say much more than that, because we have to see what the document actually says. and it will deal with the old QCTO link qualifications, all the old QCs. And these really talk about even the qualifications that were brought in since the QCTO got going, as well as all the pre-2009 qualifications. QCTO came into being in 2009. So everything, but in everything that wasn't allocated to Umalusi or allocated to the CHE was allocated to the QCTO. So they're going to deal with the history. And we need to watch that, because some of your qualifications that you might be teaching or your client might be using could expire or run their course. So
before you, John, just a question before you go on. So I just want to pause a moment. So it says trade, occupations, and professions. So are you thinking that we're going to get some qualifications that are uniquely targeted at a professional body or by a professional body?
That is my guess. And in fact, if you look at the South African Institute of Tax Practitioners, SIAT, there are 2 QCTO qualifications for tax practitioners that fit, ideally into that space. And so I'm seeing that could evolve more and more. I know, for example, in the trustees for pension funds, there's a qualification being developed in that space as well. So it'll be interesting, because I don't believe, Andy, and this is a long conversation, and I know I've got the half an hour thing in the back of my mind. I don't think the qualifications for, let's call it the long-standing professions like lawyers, doctors, engineers, I don't think it's talking about those, but it is talking about the newer professions that are emerging, such as, for example, a business rescue practitioner, and other type of professions. There are many. In fact, anybody wants to check at SACWA, there are about 105 professional bodies that are now recognized with SACWA. Okay, Andy?
Thanks, John. That's helpful.
Okay, so here are the names of the 8 qualifications that the QCTO will manage. These were the names as announced in the Minister's determination on the 24th of December, our Christmas present. And if you read that, you'll say the minister said, this is for immediate implementation. So that was in the determination. It was very brief. So what I thought before I talk a little bit more about the OQSF is also last year, SACWA published this document. They didn't publish it too widely, but because they did it in anticipation of the new OQSF not being withdrawn. It was withdrawn. But if you look at this document and you take some time to study it, you'll see the outer band. It's got little red dots next to each qualification name. And that you'll see there's the red stripe. That's to do the QCTO. The first 4 in the inner band are to do with Umalusi, and then the balance from higher certificate with the black dots next to them all the way to level 10 doctoral or the CHE. And what this picture represents for me, and maybe you can see it, and if you just take the yellow says that if you matriculate in South Africa, you'll get a national certificate. And if you get a qualification from the QCTO at level 4, you'll get a national occupational certificate. And that pattern follows all the way to NQF level 7, where if you get an Umalusi, if you get a QCTO qualification, it will be called an advanced occupational diploma. And similarly, excluding the degree, if you do a CHE accredited qualification, the CHE diploma, it will be called an advanced diploma. And if you read back to the minister's determination, he's determined, excuse the pun, to drive articulation across the sub-frameworks. And so the naming is the first step in driving articulation. So what also I expect in this new OQSF, which we haven't seen yet, but I think it'll be in March, is it will have 3 parts: theory component, a practical component, and experience component. And each part must contribute a minimum of 20% of the full qualification. So they've reduced the percentage, but the experiential component is still there. And this puts a challenge on providers, because for a provider to be accredited, it has to explain to the QCTO how it is going to also ensure the experiential component is delivered as part of the full qualification in preparation for the ISA. Okay, so important there, theory, practical experience there. And why I'm convinced experience will still be there is recently the QCTO had a special online conference. There were important people there, like the new SACWA chair, Paliwe Lawana, who in fact was the chair of the QCTO last year. There was Professor Stephanie Allais, who is an advisor to the minister, and both of them were talking about how important it is to build experience component into qualifications. So I know providers have pushed back, but I think it will be there. So I think it's a matter of understanding and adapting. What's another point there, the middle point is 5 to 10% of the qualification. Soft skills could be, I'm not sure, it was in the previous document, and I think it will be, because soft skills are just as important. Selling skills, negotiating skills, interpersonal relationship skills. Having the hard skills is important, but having the soft skills is also important. So I quite like that. It sort of works for me. This is important. It's the mind shift. This is the paradigm shift bullet that I need to get your minds around. If you, like me, you've come up in the SACWA unit standard model of fundamental core and elective unit standards with the critical cross fields, and now you've got to get that out of your head. What you've got to get into your head is going to be theory, practical and experiential components, and each one of those will be made up of modules. And there's not going to be this link. And I think what people are trying to do is to say, oh, well, I can just do a little bit of a tweak, and I'm going to be able to convert that old legacy qualifications into a qualification into a QCO qualification. You're not going to be able to do that. I think there's a fundamental rethink of every qualification, because it's the philosophy of a QCTO qualification is different to the old SACWA-based, the SACWA unit standard-based qualification. So paradigm shift, guys, get your minds through it, talk to your friends, talk to people in the ASDSA, have coffee chats. It is the big change. I also think that there will be an allowance for simulation for experiential component. We all know that all occupational qualifications, in particular the trades, I understand the experience part is important, and I understand a bit of some of those occupational, maybe the professional qualifications, which we haven't really got our heads around yet. While they won't give up the 20% experience component, they might allow for simulation. And here an example could be a bookkeeper. So, what you'll do is you'll simulate a bookkeeper compiling the monthly accounts and maybe a trial balance at the end of the year. It's a simulation type thing. I'm not sure, I don't have more, but what I'm doing is trying to anticipate, like all of us, what's coming.
John, if I can just comment on that for a moment. I mean, it's pretty much well accepted that the thing that makes somebody good at their job is the workplace. Yes. And you can't really simulate that. It's having done it a while and seeing all the ins and outs of it in real life that helps you become good. So I would be unhappy if that crept in, because the more it creeps in, the less link there is between the learning and what actually takes place at work.
Okay, Andy. So and I agree with you, but let me put in a plug or an advert for professional bodies. If you look at a professional body, there are 4 requirements to be awarded the designation, and one is the qualification. The second one is that experience, those articles, that time that you spend as an intern before you then undertake the final board assessment to be then conferred the designation. So for me, I get it. I think designations have a critical place to play in the South African post-school system. I don't think they've been recognized for their importance yet in relation to qualifications. So I have a different view, but your views is, yeah, we don't have time to argue, Andy. Okay, I'm just going to move on, but I think yeah, people on the call are also probably saying, oh, the simulation thing, how is it going to be done? I'm not sure, but we got to, I mean, the point is that I was around in the 90s before the first SAQA Act was brought into being. And at that stage, I remember I was at the Institute of Marketing Management at the time saying, oh my goodness, how are we going to adapt to this new thing? I mean, there was probably a bit more enthusiasm to adapt, but we did. And I think what we have to do is we have to say, here it comes, how do we adapt? And keep our businesses going. So moving on, second bullet, the OQSF policy will require an external integrated summative assessment, the ESA, by a QAP, a quality assessment partner. So the provider role will be to get the person ready in terms of those three components, theory, practical, and experience, and then to say, you are now ready to go to a QAP and undertake your ESA. And then ultimately, the certificate that you'll receive will be from the QCTO. It will not be from the provider. It will be a national certificate. That's in place. That's going to be driven hard. I can't see policymakers softening there. The QCTO will have a minimum of 120 credits or more, their qualifications. This was in the minister's determination for all three sub-frameworks. So whether you're an Umalusi, CHE, or QCTO accredited provider for a qualification, it will be 120 credits. It does allow for part qualifications, which will still need an ESA, which is like, okay, we've got to get our minds around that. I don't have all the answers. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be allowing for part qualifications. These part qualifications will have to go all the way through to and be part of something registered on the NQF by SAQA. And this was in the last year's document, and I think it's going to come through again because we need some flexibility. It will allow for skills programs that the QCTO will accredit, but that's where the accreditation will end. Won't have to go through that final hurdle as a qualification does to get onto SAQA's NLRD and therefore be on the NQF.
John, yeah. So there are two questions. Jonathan Brawns has said, currently QCTO qualifications with less than 120 credits. And is the logic then that if it's got less than 120 credits now, it's a part qualification that it'll have to be beefed up to get 120 credits before it's accepted? Yeah,
so at that QCTO online workshop, the CEO of VJN was asked this question. And he said, where it's like 110 credits or it's not quite up to 120, they're going to do exactly that. They're going to beef it up to get to just on 120 or 121. There are some other more interesting qualifications on both sides where it's sort of only 50 credits. And then there are other situations where it is 500 credits for a qualification. And how the QCTO is going to deal with that is going to be interesting. I don't have the answers for that. But if it affects you directly, I think you should be engaging the QCTO officials now and asking them, because the more they hear from you now, the better chance they've got to tweak the OQSF, the version 2 OQSF that's coming out to accommodate your particular issue.
And then the second question from Sylvia Hammond. So are you saying skills programs will not accrue credits? Maybe you can comment a bit more about how you think skills programs will fit in this framework.
So part qualification will have a credit value. Skills program, it is not clear. My guess is it will have a credit value allocated to it, but that skills program won't be part of a part qualification. It will be standalone, and therefore SAQA only recognizes, or SAQA registers full qualifications on the NQF, and that's why it's been brought back to the QCTO. But I do think that skills programs will have credits because it's the measure. A credit, as we all know, is 10 notional hours of learning at a particular NQF level. So I actually think that even the NQF level of the skills program will be specified. So for example, if a fireman wants to do a skills program in a special chemical fire, I can't imagine, but it probably take 2-3 weeks to learn. It's not linked to a qualifications. It's a special skill program to become an elite fireman to deal with those kind of fires. That could be at NQF level 7, and it could be, say, 20 credits. But it will only be registered on the QCTO's accreditation framework. It will not go all the way up onto the national framework. That's the difference. That's how I see it. Sylvia, I'm not sure if it's going to be like that. I'm hoping it will be like that. Andy, you happy? Yeah.
I think this is an area that we need to watch closely to see what it actually unfolds as. Also, another comment from Sylvia saying QCTO required 2 weeks for a skills program, which obviously excludes stuff that are shorter than 2 weeks. But I guess it's too unknown at the moment to really know how they're going to handle it.
Yeah, look, so yes, so until the document is published, we don't know. And I went, and some of you will know, I worked at SAQA. And for example, I was quite closely involved with the policy on professional bodies that followed the NQF Amendment Act. And there were changes in the last week. So, so that's why I say, if there are concerns, we can debate it here, but really it's about getting those concerns all the way. And Vijay's our man, all the way to Vijay and said, Vijay, this is a concern. How can a skills program be limited? Or we hear it's going to be limited to 2 weeks. That seems unreasonable, and give him the last minute chance to persuade those legislation writers to make changes. Andy, back to you.
Cool. There's, everybody, if you could rather not raise a hand, if you can type a question in so that I can pass them on to John. I see, Floris, you've got a hand raised. Won't you type us a question and then we can deal with it? In the meantime,
okay, I've got to move on because we did promise to do this in 30 minutes. So let's just, when we get to the end, we could maybe do questions, because this is the last slide. So we've still got nearly 10 minutes. So the other thing here is it should provide for RPL. The minister's determination was very strong on RPL. In the document that was published last year and withdrawn, RPL for the external integrated summative assessment wasn't allowed for. I'm really hoping that this time somebody would be able to be RPL'd for a full qualification in the QCTO space. I am a big fan of RPL. I've seen it work very, very well. Of course, RPL has to be rigorous. I'm not saying it's an easy way, but it should be allowed not to stop at the ESA point and then, oh, well, somebody's got to do the stupid, sorry, apologies, do the exam. Surely if they've got the knowledge, they should get the qualification. So that's the RPL. We got to watch that and see what's finally written. Lots of people have written back to say, hey, RPL for everything. It probably will still link to the OFO for guidance in qualification naming. I don't know that it's going to be the hard link that it's been up to now. I hope not. I really hope not, because we're in the 21st century and the fourth industrial revolution has hit us. And so we don't know what's coming. And the OFO is a historically based tool, but hopefully, hopefully there will be some flexibility in qualification naming. It will still have that first part, national occupational certificate, but it's what after that, in brackets, banker, teller, what a social influencer, maybe there's a qualification in social media influencer. That will not be on the OFO. And then my last point is qualifications can be a learnership, the QCTO, but it's not automatic. And that's one of my frustrations. I'm not happy about it, but it seems that that's how it's going to be, that even the QCTO, even though it's in that sort of occupational trades professional space where learnerships should just be naturally present, they're going to have to apply to the DHET for each qualification to be registered a learnership. That's what I think. Hopefully we get better news.
John, just a question around that. So in the past, my understanding has always been that you've got to run a pilot program before government funding can be used to deliver a qualification. And
Yeah.
you think is that rule going to change, do you think, based on what you've said there?
No, I think that's probably the reason why DET are holding the reins back, as in the old days, Department of Labor did, because, yeah, I mean, I think, Andy, that could be a good reason, but I don't know that it's good enough. For me, if we're going to go through the pain of registering a qualification on the through the QCTO, ultimately onto SACWA's NLRD and be part of the NQF. And it is, let me give you a practical example. There's an NQF level 6 qualification called Project Manager. It's a 2-year qualification, 240 credits, you know, in the QCTO style, but it's not a leadership. And so one of my clients is trying to sell this qualification, and the big corporates that they were wanting to sell it to saying, well, it's not a learnership, so we're not going to get our tax benefits. So we're going to look at other options for project management. So the system fails. Anyway, yeah, Andy, I got 5 minutes to go. Did you get any? Did Floris manage to write a question that we can deal with?
Floris has made a comment.
Okay.
He says here, pushing very hard for shorter skills programs for public community colleges, and they're in direct discussion with QCTO. Need to move away from learnerships towards learning programs that include apprenticeships, learnerships, and so on. And then Jonathan Brawns is saying the piloting rule is not legislated, it is in the SETA's discretion.
Oh,
so that's
okay,
quite
okay.
Okay.
That's intriguing.
Yeah, yeah.
It leaves me a bit surprised and with the lack of words. Because, okay, we will have to lobby the SETAs then as well. Okay, 23 of them. That's a bit more complicated, but we will.
And then a further comment from Floris, there's an emerging view that funding must follow demand-based skills needs and not only learnerships. And then from Gebimir, we are concerned about qualifications in the hospitality, tourism, and conservation industries, as the QCTO have very limited to no qualifications available. How can we speed up the registration of qualifications?
Okay, that is, I think the message is we take note. A couple of us in the ASDSA will apply our minds to it, and we will write back. I mean, I don't know how else to do it. We'll send a general message to all our members on the view on accelerating qualification development in specified fields. All we can do is lobby, by the way. That's to everybody. The ASDSA doesn't make the rules, but we certainly are a strong voice, and we're building our voice to hopefully influence the policymakers in Pretoria to do what is in the interests of a brilliant South Africa, including a great tourism industry and hospitality industry. So we'll get back to you guys. Thank you. Good question. Andy, that's it.
I think that's it. I think just your last slide then.
Yeah, so next month, what I'm going to cover is what is a SACWA recognized professional body and how does it fit into the South African post-school education and training system? I think it's an important question. There are 105 SACWA recognized professional bodies out there, and you know, people are starting to understand, oh, there's this new thing. So in week 1, I'm going to talk about that, and then in week 2, I'm going to really look a little bit closer into the differences between a qualification, and we all get that, designations, they are different, and licenses. Because, you know, sometimes you might have the designation and the qualification, but you still also have to get the license. So I want to unpack that next month. I'm looking forward to those 2 interesting conversations. And Andy, back to you. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, John. A lot of comments. I think read the chat later on from the people here who I think enjoying this and appreciating it. So it's been very valuable. Thank you.
Excellent. And we're on time. I love it. Yeah. So
well done, John. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Okay. Bye.